Yeah. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our January Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board meeting. Happy New Year to all of you, and hope you had some restful and festive holidays, and we're ready to go. So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And could we have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Chair Abekoga,
Here.
Vice Chair Miller,
Here.
Director Montano, Director Elahi, Director Rennie, Director Smith, Director Sinks, Director Gibbons,
Here.
Director Flagger,
Here.
Director Ellenberg, Alternate Director Yulo. Thank you. I'll note that Director Corrigan and Director Tovar are absent.
Great, thank you, and welcome back to Director Rennie. Good to see you.
We have a new director.
Oh, great. And then we do have alternate Director Tyson for Director Corrigan,
Great.
so I don't know if we
Thank
could
you.
make a note of that, that'd be great.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We will now move on to public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. The public may provide comments on any item not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized item? If not, we'll move on to the consent calendar. And are there any directors wishing to pull an item from consent or speak to an item?
I have a question about programs, so it might take 1F off for discussion.
Okay, we will.
And I could move the other items, 1A through 1H, accepting.
Yeah, I had,
Wait,
wait,
I think we have
Guys
some
are quick and
other
efficient.
comments here.
related to
So-
1F was 1G, and I had some questions on 1G.
Okay, so can we take off 1FN, pull 1FN and 1G then? Any other items?
Modification to the motions.
So motion by Director Sinks to move the balance of the consent item other than 1F and 1G, seconded by Director Gibbons. Any other discussion? Is there a member of the public wishing to speak on any of these items? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. So why don't we move now on to item 1F, 1F, sorry.
Yeah, and
Director
maybe they
Sinks.
are related. I just noted in my pre-meeting discussion with Girish that I was interested in whether we were well set up to have heat pump conversions for water heaters work. And he noted that an esteemed member of the public that cares very much about decarbonization recently had the experience of having to replace a water heater. And if you know how that goes, it's like, you know, the water heater burst and you call the contractor and it's Sunday and yeah, they'll have it done on Monday, but they're going to do the most expedient thing. And I asked whether our program covered the prep of getting the panel connected to, you know, a 240 wired up to where that gas-fired water heater is today, and the other infrastructure needed to make it a non-gas water heater, an electric heat pump water heater. And he said not. And so I just, I would bring up for staff and our consideration, perhaps a change to this program which would enable that kind of conversion. So I don't know if anybody else has had this experience, but I was amazed, and not unsurprised, but amazed to hear that even our most staunchest defenders of decarbonization aren't able to get the job done when it hits them suddenly.
Did you have comments as well, Director
I
Miller,
could
or-
pile on because it's very closely related, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if.
So
you wanna
first,
take
let me
both, that's
second
fine.
everything you said, and I spent 3 weeks with no hot water, living off our solar hot water, trying to get a non-gas solution for my hot water heater, and it was not possible. And you know that I was trying pretty hard. Related to these items, one of the things was we were looking at how we were going to allocate grants, and one of the things we had done was we had proposed moving the reimbursement charge for a panel upgrade. We've removed the limit of 200 amps, so you could go bigger. But we reduced the amount from $1,500 to from $2,500 down to $1,500. And I worried that the panel upgrade is a gating item to any other electrification in the house. And I worry about the wisdom of reducing the price, the reimbursement price, to $1,500 from $2,500, given my experience that it already costs more than $2,500. And I didn't know if staff had any comment on that or others had thoughts on it. But I agree with Rod's fundamental premise, which is everything that we do needs to be dealing with not just us super early adopters, but laying the groundwork for regular people to put themselves in a path of decarbonizing their house as they start to convert and roll over their appliances. Anyway, somebody from staff might have a comment on the 15 versus 25.
Mr. Valichano, do you have comments?
Yes, we have staff here ready to address those comments.
Amy and
Would
John.
you-
Great, thank you, directors. John Supp, Manager of Account Services and the Program Manager for the Heat Pump Water Heater Program. Yeah, I'd love to address the service panel upgrade question. So just take it back for a second. Maybe 18 months ago, as we were launching this, we made some predictions and did some market research about costs for service panel upgrades. And based on the information we had at the time, we made it an incentive level estimate where we thought we'd get some reasonable uptake. And the question is, what is reasonable? Undefined. We sort of made an estimate that about somewhere between a third to maybe 40% of the customers that participate in the program would also do a service panel upgrade. Not everybody has a small service panel, and not everybody needs to change the service panel to make it work. So again, these are sort of back of the envelope estimates. We now have about as of today, 48 systems that are fully installed. We have 17 of them that are installed with service panel upgrades to 200 amps. So we have a little bit of data. I don't want to say that we're done with it, but we have a little bit. Based on what we've seen, we had predicted about a $4,500 cost originally for a service panel upgrade. The existing service panel upgrades are coming in closer to about $3,000. So we believe, and again, we're still early, we haven't interviewed all the contractors or all the projects, but it appears as though because they're already on site doing other electrical work, that the incremental cost to do a service panel, since you're already there doing the wiring for the actual heat pump water heater, is a little bit less than it would be if it was just a standalone service panel upgrade with no additional work. So based on that, having a $2,500 incentive on about a $3,000 project cost, again, we can do whatever your guidance is. Our review of it seemed like a very generous incentive, which again, I'm not opposed to offering whatsoever since we did start with the 2,500. But we thought since the data coming in showed a decrease compared to our estimates, we thought it's more responsible to reduce our incentives commensurate with that.
Can you speak to my question?
Yeah, I think that's another good question. Allow me a little bit of a ramp up to get to the answer.
Sure.
This is doing emergency replacements is an extremely important part of a healthy heat pump water heater marketplace. And I will feel confident to categorically say today that the market cannot do that service. There is no supply sitting in Home Depots or Lowe's nearby to actually buy one. They're special order. The contractor community has expressed through their contractor bids a preference oftentimes for the customers to buy the heat pump water heaters themselves, because the contractors themselves don't actually have any volume-based purchasing power, because this is also a new product line for them. They don't have a long history of purchases of these. We have conducted trainings supported by BayREN for city staff members. We've done it for 3 different cities. We've had trainings for heat pump water heaters for inspection and permit staff. Feedback there is that of the 24 city staff members that we trained, 0 of them had ever worked with a residential heat pump water heater before. So just all in all, we are far away from being at a mature spot where when the phone rings at a water heater contractor's phone, where they would even ask the question, is it an electric heat pump water heater? So where I think your point is really valid is, as we're looking at what does maturation of the market look like, the ability to have rapid response emergency replacements of water heaters is a target and a goal. But based on where we are today, it's probably, it's hard to say years, but it's, a year or two away. Where I think we have good support for what you're talking about is SMUD, after having worked, Sacramento Municipal Utility District has been running a heat pump water heater program for several years. They have now created an ecosystem by which, and a contractor pool and a supply base and a permit process, by which they will now guarantee a 48-hour turnaround. They will even put you up in a hotel room if you don't get the electric water heater put in place within 48 hours. So there are models and there are processes to get there. But most of the contractors we're working with have now done one heat pump water heater, maybe two, and there's one that's done 15. So we have a really odd sort of Pareto distribution of who's actually competent. I shouldn't say competent. Who is doing a large quantity of competent work, right? So I think as we continue to develop that pool, I think having this ability to do retrofits becomes better. When the time would be to try to implement something that is going to, the question is whether we need to do a pre-wiring opportunity like you're describing, or whether we need to reach a market maturity situation like SMUD is doing. I think both of those are potential to help get emergency replacements done. So I appreciate you giving me the long sort of lead into that.
No, I appreciate that. So I actually attended a SMUD webcast recently about their programs, and I know this is one of the things they talked about. So what you're saying is over time they've built up this ecosystem, and we could endeavor to do the same. But at this point, we would be spending our money perhaps foolishly to pre-wire for heat pump water heaters.
So I think the question,
on the event of their demise.
I think what you just brought up there also ties back a little bit with what Director Miller's experience is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we can certainly find enough money to solve any problem in any retrofit situation.
Yeah.
The question is that a reasonable use of the money,
Right.
right? Yes, maybe it's $20,000 to fix a really unique, hard problem. The question is it better to fix the one or do 10 other ones? And when is the right time to make those decisions? So again, with your guidance and input, we're happy to go whichever direction you think. Our discussions have been, I think our market locally is still maturing a bit. And so we will take these inputs in and try to figure out the right time to feather them into the maturation.
So I
and
heard you say
transformation.
Sacramento was ahead of us.
They did
that
borrow.
motivates us.
They did borrow our service panel upgrade.
Thank you, John. That was one of the best answers I've gotten to a question ever.
Bringing it back to directors, so I have Director Gibbons, Director Yulo, or Director
So
Tovar?
my comments earlier to staff were also on this topic. Several discussions have been that in neighborhoods where things are undergrounded, the connection from the local transformer up to the panel can be very expensive. And I'm comfortable with the discussion that this is a maturing and learning experience. And then as we periodically update and get our update reports, that we might come in with a series of alternatives where an applicant can come say, well, this is my particular situation. Do you have any additional grants? So you can keep the initial grant at a reasonable experience level, but at least say under certain circumstances, we might be able to, because not everybody does more than the more than the hot water heater. That's sometimes a baby step. So I think we need to be flexible for that. So just keeping that in mind, I think, would be beneficial.
As usual, John, did you want to argue with her?
No, actually, I was gonna. Try that. Yeah, I've tried that before. It doesn't work very well. I'm kidding. So, in 2 weeks, I'll be going to Sacramento to do a lot more in-depth work with heat pump water heaters. There are going to be 120 volt So lower amperage, lower wattage, retrofit type models.
Oh.
And so again, part of this evolution, both on the heat pump water heater side, is going to be as they get better and the experience gets better, maybe we won't have to do as many service panel upgrades, but it definitely is a component of the overall future fit. So again, we're trying to juggle a whole bunch of things simultaneously. So
I wanted to thank my friend Director Sinks for, again, demonstrating he's a man ahead of his time. And also for giving Mr. Supp the opportunity to give such a complete and eloquent answer, which was very, I mean, we all learned something in the
Yeah,
process.
this is
That's
great.
true.
The only thing I want to add is I agree with the staff's recommendation in that with our limited dollars and our limited program at the moment, I think we should continue to invest in things that actually have an immediate payback in terms of a carbon reduction, and just upgrading the panel would not offer that. So.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on this item? Yes, Director Lahi. Can you turn your mic on, please?
Yeah, there are questions coming up and there's emergency issues. Have you considered having a hotline with a number on the heat pump or whatever product we're helping out with, so they can just call the hotline and maybe have somebody available in India or somewhere to talk back to them? Or maybe here, I guess, but anyway.
would you repeat the last part of the question? To have somebody available, to have someone available to talk to them, such that if their water heater breaks, they have someone to talk to about how an electric heat pump water heater could be an option for them?
Or how it could be repaired. If they already have an electric heat pump water heater and they need to have it repaired, somebody could direct them where to go, where to get the parts, or maybe even have some parts available
Right.
to
Maybe
ship
a
out
part
to
of
some,
that.
and give them the name of a contractor who knows what, how this is done.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. Informally, we are receiving photographs of every installation that's going in. So the old product coming out, the new product coming in. We are seeing on the photos of the new products coming in, the installation contractors' name displayed in nice prominent letters and whatnot on the heat pumps. But we'll definitely make a note to check, or I'll make a note to check to see whether their contact information is also part of that.
Oh, nice. Great. Any other comments? I'm going to open it up to the public. Any members of the public wishing to comment on? I'm going to take both 1F and 1G together. If not, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there? Yes, Director Smith.
Yeah, I move approval of 1F and 1G.
Great.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Director Smith, second by Director Sinks. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks for the explanations.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the regular calendar, and item 2, we have our lobbyist, Mr. Steve, I don't know if that's good to say or not. It's a good thing. We have Mr. Steve Baker, Government Relations Consultant, we'll call him Legislative Analyst Consultant. Steve Baker of Aaron Reed and Associates. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, directors. Thank you for having me, and welcome from Sacramento. So I want to give you just a quick introduction of who we are and what we do, and then talk a little bit about what happened last year and gaze into the crystal ball of what's going to happen in 2020 so that you can be prepared to make decisions. Like you said, my name's Steve Baker, and I'm with the lobbying firm of Aaron Reed and Associates. We're a large firm that's been in business for about 45 years. I've been there for 30 years. And have worked on energy issues for all 30 of those years. It's always an interesting time in Sacramento. First of all, I really have enjoyed working with your legislative ad hoc committee for the past year. I should also mention that Jennifer Tannehill from our office, she was hoping to be here. She came down with a bug and didn't want to pollute me or you, and so she's not here with me today, but she works on your issues as well. So we've had many meetings with your legislative ad hoc committee, both on the phone and in person in Sacramento, and have had them up to Sacramento to meet with legislators. We have a weekly call with Garish and Hillary once a week to go over the upcoming week and strategize and make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're there to implement your vision. We participate in weekly strategy meetings with the Cal CCA lobby team, as well as the individual CCA lobbyists. We meet weekly to get together and all of the CCAs to strategize and make sure that we're on the same page and working together. We've been reviewing all of the legislation that's been submitted in the legislature to determine whether or not there might be some impact on Silicon Valley clean energy. And just to give you the scope of that, last year in the State Assembly, there were a total of 2,081 Assembly bills introduced and 962 Senate bills. And we looked at all of those and all of the amendments and put those into a computer database that we exchange with Hillary with your positions that you've assigned, and we're able to then use that to keep track of things and know when hearings are coming up and make sure that we're there to testify and lobby on your behalf. The first thing that we were asked to do when we came on board was to work to elevate your profile in Sacramento and to meet with legislators and make sure they knew that you existed and what you did. And we did that individually. We did that in coalitions with Cal CCA, and we did that with your ad hoc committee. We did that with Girish and Hillary, who also came up to Sacramento, and that was a very successful program. By the time the session was over, legislators knew to pick up the phone and give us a call and ask, where is Silicon Valley Clean Energy on Senate Bill ABC or Senate Bill whatever. So that's the place you want to get to, so that they know who you are and what you do, and that they care about who you are, and that they want to be on the same page as you. And so that went very well. We also worked on several bills on your behalf, and I think the biggest one that we can talk about, and I know that Girish and Hillary have reported on in the past, was the defeat of AB 56 that would have taken procurement ability, your procurement authority away from you and provided that to a third party. And in essence, that's what Silicon Valley Clean Energy does, is procure electricity for your customers. And to have somebody else do that without your consent was a significant problem. And we were able to defeat that bill in the Senate Energy Committee. There were also a handful of other bills that were a real problem. SB 155 by Senator Bradford set up some compliance obligations on CCAs. We were able to get amendments to that removed our opposition, and same with an O'Donnell bill, AB 1362, that put additional burdens on CCAs. This is something that CCAs have been working on for years, where the utilities or others put new burdens and obligations that are unreasonable on CCAs. They try to give somebody else a competitive advantage and you a disadvantage, and so we've been working to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, 2020, we've learned that we can't just write 20 on our thing. We have to avoid fraud and have it say 2020 on our checks. What's going to happen this year? First of all, 2020 is an election year. So all 80 members of the Assembly are up for election. There's half of the senators that are up for re-election. Here in the Silicon Valley, you have 3 of your senators that are term limited out and departing: Senator Monning, Senator Hill, and Senator Bell. And Assemblyman Chu has decided not to seek re-election. So there's going to be some turnover here in your local area, and we're going to have to re-educate whoever those new folks are that are elected to those positions. And you need to think about an election year while they are making their policy decisions, because that will cloud decision making in Sacramento, and we can talk about that more if you want. There are going to be several very, very, very controversial ballot measures on the ballot. I won't go into the details of those, but there are rumored to be some behind-the-scenes negotiations with the legislative leaders and the governor to maybe remove some of those, and some of those will have local impacts on you down here. The bill introduction deadline is February 21st. Like I said, there were about 3,000 bills introduced last year. There's going to be another 3,000 bills introduced this year. We'll be reviewing all of those bills. We'll be going through that same process and working with you and your staff as you determine a policy and communicating that policy to legislators. But the big thing is what's going to happen with the with a PG&E bankruptcy. I mean, there's a handful of great big gigantic issues that you can read about on the front page of the newspaper every day, and the PG&E bankruptcy is one of those. And the PG&E power shutoffs are another one. So we expect there's going to be significant legislation on dictating what PG&E and the other utilities can and can't do, and what kind of notification they need to provide and who they need to provide it to. But really the elephant in the room is, what is PG&E going to look like as it emerges from bankruptcy later this summer? And how is that going to impact you? And those are things that we've been monitoring very, very closely, and talking to Girish and Hillary about on a regular basis, and making sure that you're in the best possible position as the PG&E bankruptcy unfurls itself later in this summer. Other than that, there will undoubtedly be additional attacks on CCAs that we're going to have to deal with. I think we're well equipped to deal with that. We've shown that we've been able to rally as a coalition with the other CCAs and fend those things off. The PCIA is another issue that we anticipate we're going to have to deal with, the power surcharge. There have already been proposals to have that be increased significantly, and to the degree that there's some politics involved in that decision, then we'll be available to help out your team to make sure that your interests are protected. And with that, I will wrap up, and I think I'm supposed to answer questions, right, Girish? Okay.
Thank you very much. Any questions from our board? Wow, you did a great job.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure seeing all of you in person. Thank you.
Great. I'm sorry, did you?
I just wanted to say thank you for this presentation this evening, as well as all of the behind-the-scenes work that you do with staff and Hillary. It has been informative, certainly for me. I actually understood what you were just speaking about, which is saying a lot. So I thank you very much, and I look forward to the upcoming year with what you will continue to provide us with.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
I'd just like to add that as the chair of this, the
Oh, yes.
ad hoc committee that we've had, I too appreciate your work, and think that it was a wise decision of this board to hire Steve and his colleagues at Aaron Reed. I think we've been much more engaged and actually been very successful, although we're in a defensive position. We did well in the legislature last year, and I think advocacy was key to that. So thank you, sir.
Great, thank you very much.
I,
Oh, yes, Director Elahi.
we kind of discussed this informally at our meeting earlier on, but what do you think are the chances of the San Jose Mayor's proposal to basically take over PG's capacity in some form? Is that something that's going to go forward, in your opinion?
We did discuss this informally earlier, but the complicating factor here is that the PG&E bankruptcy is going to be decided by a federal bankruptcy judge, and the federal bankruptcy judge has significant power and authority there. He's got competing plans that he needs to consider, where people that have legal standing in court have presented proposals that allow PG&E to emerge from bankruptcy intact while paying off fire victims, retirees, employees, those kinds of things. The mayor's plan is a skeleton of an outline, but it doesn't have the financing details in order to take care of those groups. How does the mayor's plan provide compensation for the victims whose homes have burned down? How would retirees how would their pension plans be funded? It's those kinds of nuts and bolts that the bankruptcy judge will be deciding. And so until there are competing plans that address those details, that's the challenge.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, Director Yulo, I'm sorry, I think we
sorry.
have more questions now.
Director Sinks said something which again stimulated me to comment. And this is a question maybe for you as well as Girish. Are we thinking of putting forward any bills and suggestions for legislation in the coming year to maybe not be so defensive, but maybe play the other side of the ball for a change.
I would leave that answer to Girish. I think that is something that is still under consideration.
Yeah, exactly right. So we are discussing this at Cal CCA. I can tell you the two areas of specific interest to us are the future of PG&E. So there's a PG&E restructuring discussion we're actually going to have at the Cal CCA board tomorrow as to what kind of position all of us can take as to what we think the future of PG&E ought to be. That will help in responding to and addressing what we expect to be dozens maybe of bills dealing with the PG&E situation that are going to be coming up. So these are like principles that we are putting together to see if we can coalesce around. So that's one. The second is what Steve talked about, PCIA. We came to you a month ago, talked about the 70% increase in the PCIA, and there are issues around a cap on the PCIA which would limit the increase to about 20 to 25%. But if that cap doesn't stay and the PUC allows the entire 70% to be put onto our customers, we will be looking at legislative solutions. So those are the two big areas which may have a business interest for us.
All right, last call. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there any public comment on the report? Nope. All right. I will close this item then, and we'll move on to item 3. Climate Youth Ambassador Program recap. And we have our CEO to introduce our special guest speaker.
Yes, I am very excited to introduce to you Mr. Kaushik Tota. And Kaushik is a Sunnyvale resident and junior at St. Francis High School, and he interned with SVC from October 2018 to December 2019. But we got to meet him actually at an event that was hosted by the city of Sunnyvale. They had an amazing hackathon, and Councilmember Smith was there, and I was one of the judges among several other people. And we heard Kaushik speak, and it was like, wow, this is a future leader. It was very impressive. He did get a prize at that hackathon. And so we brought him in, and under the mentorship of John Supp and his ideas, he has launched the Climate Youth Ambassador Program to educate youth on issues facing the climate and actions to make an impact. To get the program started, Kaushik developed a project plan and then began recruiting high school students from nearby schools. I'm going to ask him to tell you more about the project, but Kaushik, please come on up. I'm going to recognize him with the plaque from me and us, and then he's going to talk to you about his project.
Hello, I'm Kaushik, as Mr. Balachandran just introduced me. I'm a junior at St. Francis High School. I'm 17 years old, and I started the Climate Youth Ambassador Program last year in 2018, November-ish, as Mr. Balachandran said. And today, I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of basically how the program was formed, some of the activities that we've been doing, some more about our ideology as a group, and our future goals. Is there a quick little one? Thank you. So our goal as Climate Youth Ambassadors is to raise awareness about the significance of the climate crisis and equip individuals with resources and knowledge that they can use to lead more environmentally friendly lifestyles. as youth, we focus our outreach on with other youth. So we primarily go to elementary schools and middle schools and other youth-oriented community events. But we interact with everyone, and we go to tons of different events and just try to spread this mentality of being environmentally friendly and reducing your carbon footprint and the amount of resources that you consume. So Mr. Balachandran basically covered how we were formed, or at least the earliest stages of that. I presented at the Climate Action Plan 2.0 Innovate Climate Action in Sunnyvale event, which was located at LinkedIn, and it basically brought together a bunch of people with really promising ideas that could be added to the City of Sunnyvale's Climate Action Playbook, which would aim to achieve carbon neutrality in Sunnyvale. And so I was selected to present there, and I talked about my idea, which was essentially to create a network of youth-driven awareness systems where kids go to other youth and sort of talk about this, and also recruit other kids who can then keep going to more schools and more events, and sort of create this domino effect of like everybody working together to raise awareness about the environment. And there are a bunch of different panelists from local groups that advocated for the environment or provided environment-related support or services for the local community. And among those were Mr. Balachandran and Mr. Sup. And they really liked my idea, and so they recruited me as an intern. And I joined SVCE in November 2018, and I basically created the project plan for the Climate Youth Ambassador Program. And I began reaching out to high schools all across the South Bay to get them to put this program on their schools' announcement systems, or like emails or newsletters or whatever it may be, to get them to join. And so then I could like train them, and we could all go to events and stuff like that to get this off the ground. So I recruited my first team, and trained them in around February of 2019, and we went to our first event in April of 2019. So our current team consists of 19 high schoolers from 10 schools across the Bay Area. I'm not going to read off all the names because I don't think that's necessary, but we have kids from schools all over, and we all bring the diversity of each school, the stuff that we've learned from that school, the information that we've learned from our peers, and we put that all together to try and create a comprehensive awareness system and content that's relatable and personalized for everyone from everywhere. And so now a little bit more about our ideology. We believe that progress cannot occur without awareness. At the most fundamental level, everyone needs to be aware of the climate crisis in order to spur on policy action and implementation of various processes and services and technologies that will combat the climate crisis. So we want to, at this fundamental level, create that awareness and get people to understand that it's really important to reduce your carbon footprint and to be more conscious of the resources that you consume. We also believe that awareness at an early age is absolutely vital to this. As the years progress, climate change is only going to have more devastating effects, and if we don't educate everybody, especially youth, to adapt to the changing lifestyles that they will inevitably face as a result of climate change, they will be very unprepared for the consequences that are already being set in motion right now. Although we're doing everything we can to stop the effects of climate change and mitigate the effects of the carbon emissions and other pollutants that we've already put into the environment, it's important to educate kids with all the information they need, so that when this change in lifestyle is needed, they're used to it and they understand why they're doing it. It's not just something that's being forced upon them. They understand what's happening and they're ready to take action against it. And so this is why we focus a lot of our outreach on kids, and we create lots of fun and interactive activities that try to get the kids' attention and then present information to them in a way that they understand well. We also try to, in this line of relating to them, create emotional connections. At a young age, kids are very emotionally malleable, and this is something that we try to utilize to the fullest extent. By talking about topics like the polar bears and the ice caps melting and the polar bears losing their home, we're creating something that is emotionally, that generates an emotional attachment. Kids care about polar bears. They're adorable. Like, who doesn't like polar bears? And so these are the kinds of things that we try to talk about in order to get them to understand the effects of climate change and then, in the process, get them to take action. So there are two main kinds of activities that we do. The first are presentations and assemblies at elementary schools and middle schools. And at these presentations, we talk about first who we are, and then we start with a conversation about what kids like about the planet, whether it's the forest or the beach or even just cities. We try to get them engaged in the conversation and talk about what they care about. And then we go into the science of climate change. So what causes climate change and what contributes to climate change. We then talk about the effects of climate change and global warming, everything ranging from sea level rise to deforestation to desertification to the melting of the ice caps to coral bleaching. We talk about all these different effects to help kids gain an understanding of the breadth of the climate crisis, and that it's not just affecting a small subset of our planet. It's a global phenomenon, and it will affect our entire planet equally. Then we transition to what everyone can do to reduce their carbon footprint and help fight the climate crisis. So we talk about things ranging from small tips that don't require a large change in lifestyle at all to habits that they can take up in order to reduce their carbon footprint, and how they can start conversations with parents, with local government officials and the like in order to create change in their community, starting from just their household, ranging to maybe a city, a county, or even a state. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about at schools, and we enclose all of this in a really fun and interactive presentation format. We also go to community events where we usually set up a booth or a table, and we have a bunch of different activities set up at that table, and people can just walk up to our booth and engage in a conversation with us about the climate. So through this booth, since we can't really have them there for like a whole 25 or 30 minutes, we talk to them about one topic that they're interested in, and we are then able to provide them with personalized information and content that they care about. So these are the kinds of things that we do in the community. And so far, since April of 2019, we've been to 13 events and have an estimated reach of over 1,800 individuals. And out of this 1,800, over 1,200 of them have been youth. So we're extremely happy that we've had the opportunity to go to these events, and we hope to go to many more in the future. And so that brings us to our goals for 2020 and beyond. First, we want to conduct more events at elementary schools and middle schools. So this includes assemblies or after-school presentations or anything like that that we can do directly at an elementary school or middle school. We also really want to expand the Climate Youth Ambassador team. Right now we have plenty of high schoolers from the South Bay, but we would like to expand further and also get more representation from socioeconomically disadvantaged areas or generally underrepresented areas. And we want to bring everyone together in this community that can work together to fight the climate crisis. Lastly, we want to raise awareness about our activities, and that way we can build a better reputation for ourselves and then get into more events and go to more schools even more easily. And that sort of just creates a domino effect where by going to those more events, we make an even bigger name for ourselves, and we can just keep growing from there. So those are some of our goals for this year. And I just want to thank you guys for having me today, and I especially want to thank everyone at SVCE for supporting me through this entire process and supporting our team. It's been seriously like one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I'm so happy that I'm going to get to continue this program and keep growing it. It's been a lot of fun, and I learned a lot through it. So I just want to thank everyone for providing me with this opportunity.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of comments and questions, and
Sure.
I'm just thoroughly impressed and amazed, and we should be thanking you for all of your dedication. This is really quite an incredible program that you've started, so thank you. And I think the young people have it a lot better, get it a lot more than some of us adults, and so I would love for you to expand this to the older folks. But I'm going to go to our CEO, and then I'll take comments and questions from the board.
Board, I neglected to mention one of our staff members who had a key role in helping this program. In this program, and that's Colleen McCanning. She's our youth outreach leader.
Good job.
And you all remember Colleen from the amazing last Bike to the
Yes,
Future.
yes.
And then she's moved on to do bigger things right now. She's delegating that to Lauren for next year, but still overseeing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I'm just going to start from this end and go around. I saw some hands. Oh, yep. Okay.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me commend you on this. When I first read this, I was like, I couldn't wait to sort of learn more about it. And I appreciate your love and your dedication, not only to you, but the staff members as well. Prior to City Council, I spent several years on the school board out in Gilroy. So I had an opportunity to talk to several of the board members and superintendent, and I appreciate you wanting to reach out even further, because I know that there's individuals that really want to participate. I understand the difficulty of transportation for events out in this area, but there are some quality students out there that would love to participate. And then the other thing too, besides the love of it, I mean, as a former director of admissions at Stanford, this looks good on your college application. It looks really, really good. But I hope that we would also reach out to South County as well, because I'm sure you probably already have, but I think maybe having you come out, and do a presentation to the school board would be excellent. So again, thank you for the work that you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That really was a brilliant and well designed and well presented program. So congratulations first, and thank you. I do have two questions that I would love to hear a little bit more about. You talked in generalities several times about encouraging youth, little kids, teenagers, to reduce their carbon footprint. Do you offer specific suggestions that are appropriate for kids? And if so, I would love to hear what kind of guidance you offer.
Yeah, so one thing that we talk about is transportation, particularly how you get to school or how you get to any significant location where you spend a solid amount of time. And so we try, for like presentations, for example, we try to get like kids to raise their hands for every form of transportation that they take. And then we engage the kids directly and ask them, why is it better to take this form of transportation as opposed to this? And what are some ways that you can, so after they answer that question about like, well, cars, if it's a gasoline car, you're burning gasoline, and that releases carbon dioxide. So then we talk about, well, if you have friends nearby, you can all carpool. Or if you live close to school, you can take a bike or walk or skateboard to school. And we also talk a lot about just reducing the amount of energy you consume, because since a lot of our activities occur in this area, which receives carbon-free power now from Silicon Valley Clean Energy, we focus a lot more on like just reducing your energy consumption in general, because that is also really helpful, because I mean it's important to just conserve all resources that we consume. So we talk about like how obviously the age-old saying, turn off the light in a room that no one is in. We talk about how you should be unplugging chargers that aren't charging anything, because they consume up to half the power even when idle. We talk about things like watering plants in the evening or in the morning to reduce evaporation and things like that, to just get kids to learn about how it's important to conserve the amount of energy and resources they consume as well.
Thank you. And my other question goes to the goals. You talked about your goals being raising awareness. And I'm wondering if you've thought at all about metrics for success. It's great to push out information. How do you know, or how will you track, if you're going
Right.
to, whether you're having an effect? Will behaviors change? Will you be able to measure impact other than
Right.
in numbers of presentations that you make?
Right. So right now, the main roadblock we've had is because a lot of our audience is younger. There isn't much of a way to get to track their habits over time, because you have to. That requires getting their attention again at some point in the future, filling out a survey or asking them a question, which is sometimes difficult to do. But we're trying to figure out some sort of feedback system that anyone can participate in, that we will post on our social media, on our website, and distribute to schools after a presentation. So any person who wants to voluntarily just share their thoughts on how our presentation or how our discussion with them has shaped their thought process with regards to anything they do in their daily life, whether it's how they get to a place, the food they pick, or when they choose to do certain chores. Those are the kinds of things that we would like to gather information about through some sort of survey system that we plan to implement in the future.
Thanks. I think that really would be an
Yeah.
interesting piece, either collecting the surveys or maybe even offering contests or competitions to show maybe energy reduction over three utility bills, or I don't know if we can measure consumption levels at a school district or a particular school, but there might be really specific ways to do that as well. But I think this is so exciting, and I really wish you the very best and every success.
Thank you.
So I'll just echo what everybody else had said. We're all up here smiling. Thank you, congratulations, great work. I agree with Director Ellenberg talking about, as you move forward, how do you measure some of this? But I do want to say just launching the program and what you've already accomplished is success. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I just have 3 quick questions. One, quick questions. With the goals, we're all city council members, and so to the extent we can help you reach these goals, I think you should use us, essentially. Work with councils, let us know if we can help, if our staff can help. And I agree that also maybe if you haven't done it already, reaching out to the school districts to see how they can get you into the school assemblies and help you raise that awareness. I am with the City of Los Altos, and when we were first discussing the REACH codes, we had at least 20 students from Los Altos High show up. I don't see Los Altos High listed here. So I don't know if that's something you also consider doing, maybe partnering with already established high school groups to build awareness, build partnership, and build your program.
Yeah, we do collaborate with other youth groups, youth environmental groups in the area under the umbrella of there's an organization called Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, and that's sort of an umbrella organization through which all of us collaborate and participate in youth climate summits and things like that.
And then the last thing I see here, you have your website, climateyouthambassadors.org. I think this is being recorded, climateambassadorsyouth.org. Can an individual go to the website and just sign up to be an ambassador? What's the process to become an ambassador?
Right, so we usually have specific orientation meetings where it's either an in-person meeting or a Zoom web call. And so people who are interested in joining can receive the link or just look for the information online. We usually post it on our social media, which is linked on our website. And we also have direct, each of our ambassadors does direct outreach to their own school and a set of other high schools that they select. So each ambassador selects 3 to 4 high schools to email when we have these recruiting seasons. So if there's 19 of us, that's 60 schools, or 80 schools almost. So each of us emails those schools, and we try to negotiate with the principal or whoever the principal redirects us to in order to get the orientation meeting information into whatever information or communication channel they have for their students.
Thank you. And I assume those are your parents in the back, so I just want to say to them as well, great job. You should be proud. Congratulations.
As all comments are great, and to see how much this board is engaged with what you're doing and sees the potential of it, thank you very much. It's very exciting. So my thoughts are, I think one of the great advantages of being part of Silicon Valley Clean Energy at this point is we have so much going on that there's a marvelous opportunity to leverage all the different programs that we're working on. And the first one that comes to my mind is this time of use change that we're going to be going through in October. And that would be potentially an area where you might be able to get some metrics going, because the young people are going to be going home and they're going to be able to explain to their parents what the time of use is and how much money they're going to be saving on their electric bills. Optimism here. I just think there's tremendous potential for you and the whole approach that you're taking with the young people who someone said earlier who know way ahead of this than most of us are. So thank you for the enthusiasm. I wish I had the energy that went along with that. Thank you.
Apparently it's required, so thanks for setting it up that way. No, thank you for everything that you've done. I'll keep it super short. Can you tell us how many hours a week or a month you spend on this?
It depends on the week. If sometimes we have a large event, or sometimes we have 2 events in a week, and when that happens, I end up putting in significantly more time, as does the entire team. But then we also sometimes have gap weeks where no one has responded to us, and we're just kind of just sitting there and waiting for a response. But yeah, I don't know, do you need a number?
No, I just wanted to feel, and you gave me more than enough.
I guess it would range from 1 to 25.
Oh, wow.
But that's obviously if I have a break from school or something. That wouldn't be feasible if I have school that week.
So let me thank you for your dedication and the effort that's obvious. And I will remind you, I'll look down here, you got to get those grades to get into Stanford too. So please keep up on your classes. But thank you for all that you're doing for us.
So first and foremost, thank you. I am the parent of 3 sons, and 2 of them are at Bellarmine, and they have lots of clubs. I hope you've reached out.
Yes, I have.
Most of my comments have already been made by my fellow directors, and I'm so pleased that we all think so similarly. But I hope you will leverage, and I'm saying this to our staff as well, I hope we can leverage the directors' contacts at our own schools and local school districts to help open doors for this incredible program. And much like Director Tovar's comments, whether you're a student athlete or not, you should be filming this because you're going to want to submit this with your applications next year. Your work is incredible.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Rod from Cupertino, and I am also grateful for your work. I'd like to give you a little homework, which is to spread the word about a conference that's happening on March 28th in South San Francisco. 9 counties in the Bay Area, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has held this annually. This is the 6th. And it will bring together youth who are motivated to work in...
I believe we've applied for a presentation there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So for the rest of you...
Hopefully somebody has some pull to help.
He's on it.
You're on it. For the rest of you, you can go to sparetheairyouth.org and register for this. And it fills up every year. So whether or not you have a presentation spot, I'd encourage you to get the word out.
Definitely.
I have a little poll over there.
Only we knew someone.
Which I'm using right now because the best leverage is you, right? You have your network and you can help promote this. And I will leave you with one other thought, which is, you know, I appreciate that you care about polar bears, and I care about polar bears too. But I was in a meeting a few months ago with Gina McCarthy. She's the former EPA administrator under President Obama, and she said to the group, I don't want to be quoted on this, she said, so forget we're on tape. She said, I hate polar bears. And she had to explain that, right? Because of course she loves polar bears, but she said, the problem is for so many people that need to get the message, that really doesn't hit home. They don't really care, right? So you have to explain, you have to get a message out that is more urgent, that says, no, it's not just wildlife up in the Arctic that's going to be affected, right?
Right.
It's the idea that, coastal inundation is happening. It's the idea that we have trillions of dollars of infrastructure that
Right.
will be lost. It's the idea that if, say, the average Earth temperature warms to 4.5 C, which is what scientists are saying, not that
Right.
aspirational thing in Paris that was 2, that the average temperature over land will be twice that. So can you imagine a California that warms to 9 degrees centigrade or 16 degrees Fahrenheit? I mean, it will change everything about farming. We will have massive droughts. And so there will be great impact in
Right.
even our lifetimes up here on the dais, but
Yeah.
certainly in yours.
Yeah.
And this message, she says, she thinks will better hit home with
Right.
people who don't necessarily think of polar bears as being in their
Right.
self-interest, right?
Yeah.
So I just offer that to you
Yeah.
as a thought and appreciate your service.
Well, I do because, it's Sunnyvale. So I am very, very proud that Sunnyvale is where you call home and that you were discovered in Sunnyvale. And I am, hi, Mom and Dad. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you were able to get to schools and do so much so quickly. And I'm reading your youth ambassador goals here and wondering what your future holds in terms of policy and advocacy. So I know that that's something you're working on and that you'll continue to work on. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with. And as you learn how this, how that all works and help organize youth and train them and teach them about how to not only live, but also to advocate
Right.
for environmentally friendly lifestyles and policies. So
Yeah.
really look forward to that. I'm delighted to see you here tonight. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So when I first moved here after grad school, I moved to Sunnyvale, but then I eventually settled in Los Gatos. So feel free to move to Los Gatos and no, seriously, thank you for all the work you've done, and congratulations for having the fortitude to get the results that you've gotten also. There's so much been said, so I don't need to add much more, but of course, like everybody, all the other directors up here, if you want to try to make more connections
For
in
sure.
Los Gatos,
Yeah.
feel free, I will help you out.
Thank you.
My turn, I guess. Kelsey, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your comments. I think you made us all proud. So even though we didn't do the work, you're doing all the work. But we kind of take credit for it somehow. I wanted to twist it a little bit. I mean, middle schools, elementary school kids are receptive, but there are still climate deniers out there. There's still people who don't believe anything is going to change. Have you run into that, and how do you deal with that?
We actually have. So we were at an event in Saratoga, and I think Mr. Supp was here with
Saratoga?
us.
That's why.
It was at a car show, if that makes a difference. I think
Sure makes a difference, yeah.
I don't think I was personally there to witness it. One of the other ambassadors was talking to a man who came up to our booth, and he said something along the lines of, he said something along the lines of, are you sure this is appropriate content to be teaching children? And so we kind of, my teammate, he sort of broke it down for him and explained all the science that points towards the fact that climate change is indeed real and that it is in fact human caused, and it is occurring at this moment and will definitely occur in the near future, or will progress in the near future. And he didn't seem very receptive of our stance. He kind of just maintained that it wasn't, or it was like, I don't know, something like slander against like conservatism or something. I don't know what he said. It was kind of just like a strange like one-off situation. It doesn't happen very often, but in the case that it does happen, all the ambassadors are trained to just like start with the science and explain to them what changes have been occurring over the past 2 centuries since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, and what changes we are seeing in the climate right now and in the recent past, and what climate scientists are predicting in the future, and why this all points to human-caused climate change as the culprit.
That's really good that the person stood their ground. It is a difficult thing.
Yeah.
We found in our city council when we were discussing implementing the REACH codes, which is to allow people to pre-wire for electric heat pumps, etc.
Yeah.
That there were people who were opposing who were making those arguments. But the best people who confronted them was our youth council. Every city, I think, has youth council. So we were able to get 15 letters from everybody on the youth council to write to the city council and say, hey, this needs to be done. So it may be a good idea for you to see if you can also interface with our youth council on some of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. We're in touch with a few. In fact, our first event was actually run by the Santa Clara Youth Commission. Wonderful. It was a 5K run, and it was also like environmentally themed. So we thought it was a really fitting way to like debut as an organization, and so that's basically where we started. So yeah, we maintain close relationships with teen commissions and youth commissions from cities in this area.
Excellent. Keep up the good work and best of luck.
Thank you.
And I also want to give a shout out to the Desi parents out there.
Oh yeah, you can't forget the shout out. Anyhow, I'm a city council member from Milpitas, and we also have a youth commission in our city. Mm-hmm. And I really admire your passion. I think that's your calling, and I think you're going to go far in great places and do a lot of great in our society. I'm thinking about the multiplier effect. How do you reach those kids that are hard to reach? I'm a teacher, so I know that sometimes it's really difficult. Sometimes you have to be creative. So I'm thinking maybe what creative methods are you using to reach those hard to reach students? I'll give you some ideas. Music, teatro, that means theater. Those are great ways to do some video clips and perhaps reach those kids that are hard to reach, because they are our future. So
yeah,
I commend you. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom and Dad, for doing a great job.
Great. Well, I think you heard from all of us, and we are big fan. Oh, Anthony, I'm sorry. A final word.
I know you
from
wanted
Anthony.
to wrap up, but if I
No,
can-
please go ahead. You wanted to wrap it up.
I appreciate all the polite comments. And let me be a little less polite, and really to echo what Director Smith said, which is the activism in getting involved in affecting policy change is really the opportunity before you. It's wonderful that you do focus on training the youth to minimize their own carbon footprint, and that maybe is the first step in getting people so that they're walking their talk. But I'm a staff person, I'm not an elected official, so I see what happens at our council level. And, sometimes decisions are hard because they cost money, or they are a whole new thing to the boomers who think that they know it all. I'm a boomer, so I'm talking about myself. But do not back down, and And don't say, okay, boomer, because that's a little rude. But do not back down, but say, listen, this is serious, and you need to take action.
Right.
And I think that coming and ensuring that there is a presence whenever there's an opportunity to have a presence at a city council meeting or a county board of supervisors meeting when they're considering a policy, it makes it much easier for these folks to vote the right way.
Definitely.
So
yeah.
They don't want to be, if you will, the aggressive green edge of opinion. They want other people in the room to be doing that. And so you can serve that role, and you can have a tremendous impact, you and your colleagues. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and by all means, do more.
Thank you.
Because we're depending on you, really.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations again, and thank you to the parents for raising such a wonderful young man. And I'm just going to note that St. Francis High School is located in Mountain View, which is my town, so I'm glad our education system is doing its job. But I do have to open this for public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak? If not, thank you very much, and thank you for making the time to come here.
Thank you for having me.
We actually called each other right before the meeting to make sure we wear our purple shirts.
Oh, yeah. All right, we are moving on to item 4, our CEO report. Mr. CEO?
Yeah.
Hard to follow that.
I know. Very, very exciting. I would like to introduce 3 of our new team members. First is Zoe Elizabeth. She's going to come up to the podium. And she joins the account services team as a senior energy consultant, primarily engaging with our cities and regional partners on electric vehicle infrastructure and resiliency efforts. She's a proven leader with a track record of developing stakeholder-driven, data-backed solutions to reducing carbon and increasing equity. She led local efforts with the County of Santa Clara and regional efforts with UC Berkeley's Center for Resource Efficient Communities and the Los Angeles Collaborative for Climate Action and Sustainability. In addition, she has secured funding from and collaborated with key state agencies such as the CEC, CPUC, CARB, and on numerous energy and transportation projects. Zoe.
Good evening, directors. I'm just thrilled to be here. I've been passionate about decarbonization, specifically on a regional level, and how we accelerate decarbonization while at the same time bringing real tangible benefits to local communities. I've been around long enough to know that CCAs are the place to make things happen, and I feel absolutely thrilled and honored to be part of this wonderful team and to work with all of you.
Thank you. Welcome. Yes.
Thank you. We are also excited to welcome Kevin Armstrong, who is our Administrative Services Manager, reporting to Don Eckert. And Kevin brings a wealth of experience to the position, including managing numerous sustainability projects. His most recent role was with the County of Santa Clara as a sustainability manager. During his time at the county, Kevin was the primary contact for the newly formed SVCE, so many of you do know him, and assisted in startup operations and helping SVCE get off the ground. Kevin has a bachelor's degree from Stanford University and a master's of science from UC Berkeley in civil and environmental engineering. Kevin?
Thank you, Girish, and good evening, directors. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on this side of the podium working with SVCE again. As Girish pointed out, I was at the county at the time that SVCE was launched and helped get numerous items through the Board of Supervisors to help with the initial funding rounds. So I'm excited to be helping to continue all of that. So I'll be working with Don Eckert on administration and finance, primarily credit and risk for PPAs and ongoing operations. So hopefully we don't have any struggles there and continue to provide power to all of our clients. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
And the newest member of our team, Freya Chai, has joined SVC on Monday as a decarb and grid innovation analyst intern. She'll be working on equity and access, resilience, and building decarbonization policy and program design. She'll be working with Amy Bailey. Freya holds a Master of Science in Earth Systems and a BS in Computer Science from Stanford. The most meaningful projects she's worked on over the last several years include teaching climate science, cultivating a more complex understanding of California's energy and climate policies, and collaborating on projects to positively position her home state of Alaska with respect to the coming decade's promised changes.
Thanks for the introduction, and pleasure to meet you all. I wasn't aware it would be read out right before I stood up here, but all of the important things are there. Really important to me, to who I am, is that I'm from Alaska, and I really want to go back there. But I've been here in the Bay Area for 6 years now, which is kind of hard to believe, and I'm really, really grateful to be learning about the California energy system, especially in this position, especially on this team. I'll be working under Amy Bailey, and my two focused projects are going to be playing a supporting role in the building decarbonization efforts and taking more of a leading role on exploring the themes of equity and access. So first off, really defining what we want those to mean, and then secondly, exploring what it means to really integrate that vision and philosophy into our ongoing operations and programs and policies. So I have a lot to learn from this team and from you all and from your communities, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Welcome.
I have one more thing I'd like to announce. I want to recognize our chair. This is your last meeting as chair, and just personally wanted to take the occasion to thank you very much for your leadership. And maybe a small story which kind of says a lot about Margaret. She's quiet and resolute. When all of you were talking about reach codes, we were all talking about it early on, and there was competition about who was going to be first. There were some front runners. Margaret just was like, I'm going to get this done. Very quietly, she just worked at it, and it really was, I saw that, working with the climate action plan that your city brought together. She was engaged in it, working with the group that Bruce was a part of, and really pushing it. And that's that kind of very quiet and resolute. And Mountain View was the first city to get this done. And I think that's really an example. She puts her mind to it.
Very competitive.
Yes,
Yeah.
and does it very quietly. So on behalf of all the employees, the community, and the board, I'd like to present to you a plaque for your year as a board chair.
Nice.
Okay, don't move, Margaret and Gresh. You guys wait right there. We all got to come up and get a picture with you. But before we do that, I just want to talk about your year. Just stay right there. Do not move. Otherwise, you'll be talking. When you're not at the microphone, the vice chair gets to speak up. Every year at Silicon Valley Clean Energy is blessed with challenges and successes. And this year was no different. You may have remembered that we went through rate setting, which was supposed to be a 1-month activity for like 9 months. We could never figure out where everybody was going and where we would land. And Margaret was our fearless leader through all of that. And I would say that was a very challenging time for us, but we've landed in a very good place. This next year is equally challenging, though. And on the good side, we set out with this little thing called reach codes. And I read an article, and I got to find it. It was either BBC or Reuters just within the last week. And they talked about decarbonization efforts in America. And they said there are 20 cities in America that have adopted codes that say no gas in new construction. And I sat there going, 20 in America, we're half of them, and Mountain View was right up there. And so it's been a challenging year, but it's actually been a really interesting year because not only have we survived, we continue to push the envelope on the decarbonization effort. And for those cities who've had enough voice And I can point to several of you who stood up and said, no, let's get rid of this natural gas. We have to be proud as an organization, and I'm exceptionally proud of the leadership that Margaret has shown us in the last year, and we could not have done it without you. And if I could get the entire board in front of your seats so we can get a picture with Margaret, I would be appreciative.
Could I have the whole group shift right? That was perfect. That was perfect.
Okay, boomer.
That's okay. Thank you.
And I'd like to say, as we're rejoining our seats, I watched the hearing where Mountain View adopted in the first reading, and Margaret just brought her counsel along and went past where staff had, and that was rather an amazing example. And frankly, right, the rest of us, many of us, took that example back to our councils and said, "Hey, Mountain View just did that," right? And that really was your leadership in Mountain View, and we all took advantage of it. So thank you.
20 cities in America, and it started right up here with us, you guys. Good job.
Thank you. I just wanted to say my heartfelt thanks to all of you. It's been a true honor to serve with you this past year, and I was thinking about, I think it was a breakthrough year for us. We accomplished more than I think we thought we would. I get kind of nostalgic as I'm going into my 12th year on a city council and mayor this year, yes, but I think about, we do this job to try to create a legacy and to be able to leave a mark, a positive mark. And I was thinking about, what could I say I was a part of? And definitely the creation of SVCE and then the REACH codes are what I consider game-changing items that we've been able to accomplish. And so I'm very proud, and you should all be very proud. I think you are. I did not know there's only 20 cities, and yeah, probably 10 of them are in our county, probably. So that's really quite, that's very impressive. But thank you all for your collegiality. We've had great discussions, I think, your thoughtfulness and your commitment to our movements, and it's really been an honor. So thank you very much. And that was your report, so we kind of hijacked that. But thank you, and then thank you actually to staff. I'm just thoroughly impressed by the backgrounds everybody has, and just how everybody's so super smart, smarty pants, as I call it. And I have learned so much in my 3 years, and so I want to thank you all to the staff for your dedication and your positivity and doing something that's a little different, and not everybody's sold yet, but I'm confident we'll get everybody bought in. So, and thank you, Girish, for what a great choice we made. So thank you for your leadership. Any public comment on the CEO's report? If not, we will move on now to the election of the new chair and vice chair for the board for 2020. And we have our board clerk, Andrea.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members of the board, In response to the request for directors to submit a letter of interest for the positions of chair and vice chair for 2020, staff received 2 letters, one for each of these roles. So for the role of chair, we received a letter from Director Howard Miller. And for vice chair, we received a letter from Director Nancy Smith. And those are included in your packets this evening. No additional letters were received. And that concludes the staff report.
Great, thank you. I believe I do have to take nominations from the floor. Are there any other nominations? We'll start with the chair's position.
Somebody have to nominate the chair? Or do we just vote?
I think we just take the vote on, correct, or do we need a nomination in a second?
You can have a nomination and a second would be the way to
Okay.
do this.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Are there nominations then for chair?
I nominate Howard Miller
Second.
for chair.
All right, any other nominations? Any other discussion? Any members of the public wishing to speak? If not, the motion by Director Gibbons, seconded by Director Rennie, for Director Miller to be chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Congratulations. You want to slide that over?
It's official.
There's no time to pause, and you guys have all seen my letter. It will be an equally challenging year, and I look forward to what great stuff we will do. And with that, we'll move right along with the agenda, which is the
I'd like to
nomination.
nominate Director Smith for your vice chair.
Second.
Who seconded that first?
No, I didn't. No,
It
he
was
didn't.
unanimous.
Everybody did. Unanimous second. I think maybe we'll go with Robert Rennie on that. Any discussion? Any member of the public wish to speak before we vote? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously. We now have a vice chair.
Congratulations and thank you.
We will change seating order at the next meeting just to be efficient this time. And I look forward to working with Nancy, who is well able to kick me under the dais when I'm not getting it right. So anything that you'd like to say, Nancy?
Thank you for the unanimous vote, and I do look forward to the challenges and opportunities and all of the great things we're doing. The report tonight is just, the agenda is just, things are finally starting to gel, and we're going to make a big impact this year, and I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks for your
Vote of
trust and
confidence.
confidence, and, you know, and I'm looking forward to helping lead the work. Thanks.
It will be a great year. Okay, we're going to move on. Item number 6, which is appoint directors to the executive committee.
Yes, thank you. So similarly to our chair and vice chair process, we requested anybody interested in serving on the 2020 executive committee to let us know. We heard from 5 directors. Those were Chair Miller, Vice Chair Director Smith, Director Abekoga, Director Gibbons, and Director Sinks. And Director Gibbons and Director Sinks also included a note of interest that's included in your packets. That concludes the staff report.
So at this point, we need either a motion on that slate and/or anybody else who feels
So
like they
moved.
want to be on. A motion, and who made the second?
Right here.
Jarvid. Okay, excellent. Any discussion? Any member of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, then we're going to call the question on that slate. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstains? That carries unanimously. Also, thank you guys. Executive committee is a lot of work. I look forward to this. And we have a lot of experience, so this should be a good year. Okay, moving right along, item number 7, the ad hoc committee formation. And I think Girish is going to propose this one.
So, Chair Miller, members of the board, at the last board meeting, we presented you options on the future of the ad hoc legislative committee, and the board gave us direction to select the option that's in front of you now. And basically, the difference between the previous ad hoc committee and the one that you're considering right now is that this committee will be term limited, and scope limited. So the limited scope is in front of you. The 5 areas that the committee can actually be discussing, and the term is through the end of the year. If you approve the formation of this ad hoc legislative committee, Andrea will then be sending out a request on January 10th, asking for interest on serving in that committee, and you'll actually appoint members to that committee at your February 12th meeting.
Excellent. Any questions? Again, this is just part of keeping this meeting a non-Brown Act ad hoc committee. It will have a 1-year term. It will be focused on these 5 items. I should point out the obvious, which is if something comes up and we need them to address the 6th item, we as a group could authorize that at some future point. But for right now, this is what it is.
That is correct. We have to look at it the next time. Want to be careful not to start expanding this scope. But at this point, it will be the topics that are part of the staff recommendation.
Right. Any questions of staff? Any member of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, any discussion or motion on this?
I would move the staff recommendation on item 7.
Second.
Boy, this number of seconds is all over the place. We're going to go way down here. I think we're going to pick Fred this time. Is there any other comments that anybody has? We're good with the 5 items? All right, then let's call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That carries unanimously. Moving right along. Item number 8, adopt resolution authorizing the CEO to execute a renewable power supply purchase agreement. Monica's going to help us out.
Good evening, directors and new Chair Miller. Am I the first to say that? Yeah. Okay, so today you have in front of you a request to adopt a resolution, essentially authorizing the CEO to execute in substantial form a power purchase agreement with a company named Ormat for a geothermal project called the Mammoth Castle Diablo, I want to say it in Spanish, sorry, Ford project, otherwise known as Orny 50 LLC. The contract would start December 31st, 2021, and go through December 30th, 2031, in an amount not to exceed $42.5 million. So tonight we'll just talk a little bit again about some of the background and why we're here asking for you to approve this PPA, a little bit about the Ormat geothermal project, our progress towards meeting our renewable and clean goals, and then some upcoming board action items that we'll have for you between now and May. So as from a big picture standpoint, what we intend to do or what we hope to do in the next 25 years, you know, as planners, we need to think that far out, but we certainly are, I think, optimistic about being able to actually carry through on some of these promises that we have between now and 2045. As you're aware, California has a mandate to have essentially an RPS that grows to 60% by 2030. And through SB 100, they actually set in place legislation that would get us to carbon neutral by 2045. So they haven't figured out how we're going to get there yet, and the details about what technology is going to be considered carbon neutral, but that is their, I guess, lofty goal for 2045. And then you as a board have also adopted some goals, including having a clean source, 100% clean source of power supply for our community, and a fairly aggressive renewable portfolio standard, otherwise known as RPS. So in 2020, we expect to be about 50% RPS and 100% carbon-free on an annual basis. And so in order for us to get there, we have to do a lot of planning, both planning that we do internally and planning that the state of California requires us to do through integrated resource plans. And of course, at the same time, we have to be procuring and then reevaluating those efforts. So this diagram here kind of shows what that planning and procurement activity or cycle looks like. So when we go out to plan and procure, I mean, it's one thing to just say we need to procure all this energy and meet our goals, but the reality is that we have to do it in a way that balances multiple objectives, not just objectives that you as a community or as a board have established for us, but ones that the state thinks are important as well. And obviously decarbonization is really important for us, but so is being affordable and having a reliable source of electricity. So because of the kind of challenge of balancing these sometimes conflicting objectives, that's what integrated resource planning does. The activity looks at those different objectives and helps to develop a plan which can accomplish all of those. And when we met with you in October and September about our IRP, we kind of got some direction from you about what would be portfolios or sources of resources that would help us achieve these objectives. We also talked to you about an RFP that we issued, again with Monterey Bay Community Power. It would be our second RFP that we issued with them. We did the first one in 2017. If you recall, some of you were here when we executed 3 PPAs out of that effort. But through this last effort, same thing again, wanting to secure some long-term renewable resources to meet both our community and state mandates. We issued the RFP in April, got responses in May, spent a good 2 months or so doing some deep analysis on those resources. We got quite a bit of proposals, and we wanted to make sure that we evaluated them using some common objective metrics and evaluation criteria. So we spent quite a bit of time doing that. We enlisted the help of an outside consultant called the Sun Analytics and their software tools to run sensitivities, to calculate what the value of these resources could be in the future and what the risk associated with those resources would be if we brought them to our portfolio. And then we shortlisted and selected essentially, ultimately 6 developers to negotiate power purchase agreements with. And we've been doing that since July. And so this is the first, the ORMAT PPA is the first one out of that process to come in front of you for consideration. So again, this RFP was issued under kind of the direction that you as a board has given us, both through our strategic plan, where we specifically have a directive to try to achieve a carbon-free portfolio. And then also through that meeting that we had with you in October, the workshop on IRP, we came to you and we told you, so we might be bringing a geothermal resource to you because, again, we're trying to balance those 3 objectives, and we find that through the analysis and the RFP responses that we got, that geothermal can actually meet those 3 objectives quite nicely. This is just a high-level summary of the proposals that we received. In total, we got 57 projects proposed to us. And a lot of those projects had multiple offers associated with them, where they varied the price, the delivery point, the tenor of the project. And so, as you can see, we received projects associated with solar plus storage, wind, geothermal. We actually didn't get anything for biofuels and biomass. So this is something I just wanted to put up there. I know that you guys are interested in us evaluating a BioX portfolio as you directed us to do in the IRP, but we haven't seen anything yet, but we'll continue to look. And then we also received proposals for small hydro. And so here, just on a qualitative level, again, those 3 objectives that we try to balance, decarbonization, affordability, and reliability, each of those projects that were submitted to us have a different ability to meet those objectives. I mentioned that we have 6 PPAs that we're actually in negotiations with. And the 6 PPAs, if they all come before you for approval, will add about 22.4 or 22% of new, clean, renewable electricity to our portfolio. That's quite significant. Right now we're at 20%, so that's almost double. And the reason we've negotiated so many PPAs is we want to make sure that we we're not over procuring, but we want to make sure that we procure sufficient to meet our community goals and also to meet the mandated requirements that we have been given to us. So this table here is, again, a high-level summary of some of those projects. Unfortunately, I can't share with you the names of the projects that we're negotiating, but once we bring them to you, that will become public information. But for now, we are evaluating 2 geothermal projects, including the one we have tonight, and 4 solar plus storage resources. And these are all contracts that we will share with Monterey Bay Community Power. So
To be clear, these are our numbers on this chart?
yes, this would be SVCE share, yeah. For the most part, we are splitting 50-50, but well, actually, I should say, no, that's not for the most part. On 2 of the PPAs, we're splitting 50-50. On the other 4, Monterey is taking a larger percentage. We haven't finalized that percentage yet because Monterey has a huge or an aggressive load growth strategy in place right now where they're expanding down south, and so they have a huge appetite for renewable resources. I should say...
Ask a
yeah.
question about that slide.
Sure.
Try to get that on. There's a significant average annual cost difference between the geothermal that we're looking at now and the number 4 geothermal for April. Can you just explain why those numbers are so different?
This interpretation of the chart, that's the nominal contract cost, and number
Yes.
4 delivers far more power than number 1
Exactly.
does.
It's a much bigger...
This is not a unit cost. Yeah, this is not the per unit cost. This is the total cost.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I was just going to note that this morning, Monterey Bay Community Power's Board of Directors approved execution of the Orne PPA. So they're one slight step ahead of us. But,
She's trying to appeal to her competitive side.
Mountain View.
yeah, Dennis wanted me to mention
Mountain
that,
View
so he's watching probably. So a little bit about
Tom doesn't have to
geothermal.
work at night,
For those of you who are not too familiar with the technology, essentially electricity is generated by extracting steam and putting steam through a turbine and creating a clean source of electricity. Geothermal has a lot of good merits associated with it. For the purposes of compliance, it's an RPS eligible resource. It's what we consider a baseload resource in that it operates almost 24/7. You know, compared to solar and wind that operate closer to 30%, this will produce much more energy for us. It tends to have high energy value because it produces in all hours. Essentially, it'll produce energy at compensate us for energy at a pretty good price, and again, because it has such a high capacity factor, it's considered a highly reliable source of energy. And because of that, it's also given a high net qualifying capacity valuation by the CalISO and the CPUC for the purposes of resource adequacy, which we all know is a really important thing as we move to that 100% clean grid. We need to have clean sources of reliable electricity as well. Some of the drawbacks of geothermal, so if it's a conventional geothermal project, it produces slight anthropogenic emissions. Those are man-made or woman-made emissions associated with the extraction process, the process of generating steam. And they're pretty small. It's the CARB estimates them at about 57 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. When you look at the PPA price, or at the face of it, geothermal tends to be more expensive than other resources, especially solar. But you have to really look at the value proposition, not just the cost of the resource, because the way these contracts are structured, again, we pay out a price, but we get in return an energy value. And so you have to net the two out. And so on the surface, these tend to be a little more costly than conventional or, solar and wind resources. And there's not too much of it because you really need kind of a steam field or a reservoir of geothermal potential. So there's not a lot that can be built. There's some big geothermal reservoirs in California. A lot of them have been tapped. There's some down south that want to be tapped, but for the most part, it's an expensive process to extract this. The Casa Diablo geothermal plant specifically is a 30 megawatt geothermal baseload energy resource. It, unlike conventional geothermal, is actually carbon-free because it utilizes this state-of-the-art binary air-cooled system. So that process of creating steam, actually they've created a technology that allows them to capture the fluid. I'm not an engineer, but something like that. But I put a diagram up here for you. I'm happy to have an engineer up here explain this, or up there explain it in more detail. The commercial online date for this project is actually quite an attractive date. It's the end of 2021. So our RFP required that the projects be commercially available no later than January 1st, 2023. So this one is far before that, and we're excited about that. It's located in Mammoth Lake, California, which is near a ski resort down south. The owner is Ormat Technologies. They will also be the developer and the operator, which is a unique situation because a lot of the renewable projects that we have been working with or have worked with, the developer doesn't tend to be the operator at the end, and so they usually sell the PPA off to somebody else, and then whoever that operator is who we get stuck with. But in this case, Ormat is pretty vertically integrated here, and that's good for us as well. The project itself is fully permitted, and they have full site control of the location, so that's also good news. It means that it reduces a lot of the deliverability or the construction risk associated with the project when they already are this far along. And it is our understanding that they have a fully executed interconnection agreement with SoCal Edison, which is the utility area where this project is located. The PPA is known as ORNI 50 LLC. It's just a legal term, I guess. But the product is going to be a PCC1, so Portfolio Power Content or Category 1, otherwise known as Bucket 1, which is also going to be Green E certified. So that's important for us for our Green Prime product, where we deliver Green E certified 100% renewable resources. And it will come with South System resource adequacy. So that's it used to matter if it was south or north, but now it doesn't. This is something that's valuable to us. The term of the contract is 10 years. Our capacity quantity would be 7 megawatts. The expected energy from this resource is roughly 57,000 megawatt hours a year, or 57 gigawatt hours a year, and over the life, about 567,000 megawatt hours, which represents about 1.4% of our load. So this is a small contract when all is said and done. The price is going to be a fixed dollar per megawatt hour with no escalator, and it'll be settled as a contract for differences contract, meaning that basically we will pay them the PPA rate. They will net out what they get from the CalISO as a credit for the energy value, and we pay the difference. If we were to execute, if you approve the resolution tonight and authorize Girish to execute this contract, we'll essentially get to a 21.4% RPS for compliance, the first compliant period where we're required to demonstrate long-term resources. Our overall requirement for that period is a 40% RPS with a 26% long-term requirement. And so it'll put us at 21.4%, not quite 26%, but with the other PPAs we're bringing, we'll be way beyond that. I just thought I'd throw this out here because one of the objectives that we're trying to pursue, and is also in our strategic plan, is that we try to diversify the location of some of these facilities. When you have everything sited in the same general location, you tend to get concentration risk associated with price. So, we're trying to have these spread out throughout California. This graph here just shows some of the projects that we've already executed and some of the ones that we're considering, and the Ormat project is the one that is circled up here. Again, if we were to execute this PPA and execute the additional 5 PPAs, we'll be at a RPS of 42% by 2023. So well on our way to meeting and exceeding our targets. So as far as other things that are in the works, we have a lot of work to do still on negotiating some of the PPAs, but we hope to bring to you at least one additional or one new solar plus storage PPA next month. In addition to that, we will be bringing to you a request to approve an amendment to an existing PPA for the recurrent energy slate, where they're asking for us to both extend, or they've given us the option to extend the term of that PPA for 2 years and increase the battery size associated with the PPA under the same terms. And so we think that that's a good proposition, and we'll bring that to you next month for your consideration. We're also looking at the possibility of procuring some long-term RPS resources from PG&E's existing portfolio. We submitted a proposal to their request for offers, and we hope to find out if we were shortlisted by the end of this month. And if we are, then we'll come to you in February for approval on that, since it exceeds Garish's authority. And then I'm just going to go through the stuff that's in bold, which are the procurement efforts that we're undertaking. Last month, we talked to you about a possible allocation of some carbon-free resources from PG&E for free. And so we hope to bring those to you again for consideration, more of a longer-term thing in March. And then bring to you the final 3 PPAs in April and May. So a lot going on in procurement, and also a lot going on in planning as we're in the process of doing the IRP and modeling. And we'll be back to you next month with some initial results, high-level initial results, and a set of principles that we hope that you would consider as our guiding principles for planning. So here's our request. Essentially, that's all I have. Happy to take questions.
All right, anybody have any questions about this? We'll start with Rob. We'll come down to you, Tony, next.
Okay, thank you. On page 2 of your report under project value, the last sentence in the first paragraph says for geothermal's generation profile is complementary to photovoltaic solar resources. You know, since it's a base load, I thought it kind of runs the same amount all the time. That sentence to me makes me wonder, does it produce better at night? That would be complementary to solar when it's not on at all. Or possibly you're saying it helps to make our duck fly by filling in at the neck of the duck curve. So I was trying to figure out what exactly that sentence meant.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is a baseload resource, and it is more intended to operate relatively flat. It dips a little bit during the afternoon hours when solar generates at its peak, but not a whole lot. There's not a whole bunch of difference between the shoulder hours and those peak hours. But yes, it's just intended to be more of a baseload resource.
So it's complementary in a little bit sense, is what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I have a graph here, but you can't see it, so it shows how it's complementary.
Is it a secret?
Yeah.
No, it's just, I didn't include it in the presentation, sorry.
I just wanted, you mentioned the recurrent project coming up, but I was wondering that the other projects, the original 3 renewable PPAs that we approved a year or so ago, are those all constructing on time, and are things looking good for those coming online as when we anticipated?
The recurrent, yes, is very much online, on track. The Big Bow as well, project is on track. We have quarterly meetings with the developers to track performance. The Duran Mesa Pattern Wind project, we have a little bit of concerns associated with the start date of that project, because if you recall, it was tied to the development of a transmission project called the Sanzia Transmission Line, which has run into some issues. The reason we haven't brought an update associated with any of those PPAs, including the Pattern Wind PPA, is because we have not received an official or a formal request to change anything from the developer. So until they do that, we basically, as far as we're concerned, they will deliver as indicated in the contract. So once they ask for a change, then that's when it triggers a change here.
If they're unable to deliver, or more germane for the issue at hand today, if this project is unable to deliver at the agreed upon time, do we have the ability to collect liquidated damages, or what sort of compensation do we get?
Yeah, it's a complicated provision, the liquidated damages and the delayed damages, but we certainly are looking into that carefully.
And I guess you mentioned that if in fact all 6 of these get approved, we'll be far above our minimum requirements, so perhaps our exposure for fines or other things is minimized anyway.
Yeah, so we'll be far above our requirement for long-term procurement, but we'll be right in line for our requirement for annual RPS.
Okay.
So we'll have an RPS of about 50%. That's what the board has directed us to try to pursue. And then in 2026, the state gets to 50% as well. And so these contracts will get us to 42%. So we'll still have to do additional procurement, whether it's long-term or short-term is yet to be determined, but we will have exceeded our long-term requirement, which is 65% of our overall RPS has to be in long-term contracts of 10 years or greater.
And then I guess lastly, it seems to me this is very much a bundled project where we're acquiring the renewable attribute and the energy at the same time?
Yes, it's a bundled fixed price for all attributes. That includes resource adequacy.
Thanks so much.
Ron?
Yeah, I really appreciate your bringing this to us. I mean, we need diversification of power sources. The wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. And some years we may be in drought, and so diversifying is important, and we need to cover our base load. So I am curious, in following up with Director Rennie's question about whether or not this is at all dispatchable. Can we, if we have an abundance of solar on a particular day, can we say, hey, keep the heat in the ground, or are we obligated to take the bulk of the load?
Right. So we're one of 3 off-takers on this project, Monterey being the other one, and the city of Colton being the original one.
Okay.
And so ORMAT will be the scheduling coordinator for this resource. We will not have the ability to dispatch it ourselves, but ORMAT will dispatch it to optimize the value for all 3 off-takers. And but from my experience, geothermal doesn't tend to be very rampy. So once you run it, you're running it, and it's hard for you to shut down and then bring it right back up. It's not that type of a project.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that. So they will take our interests, all 3 of our interests, into consideration in the operation of the plant, however.
Yes, we'll have operating instructions that we can give them about when we want it to curtail, given certain price triggers that the ISO signals, and any other instructions that we have. They'll follow those instructions. We just need to coordinate somehow with Monterey on that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is not a plant that exists today. It's
Right.
it's permitted, it's being built, but if not for our demand, our cumulative demand, in this case of 3 parties, it wouldn't necessarily be built, and we are effectively creating new renewable energy with this contract.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Exactly.
And we're demonstrating that we can work with other community choice energy providers and others to meet the state's renewable portfolio standard goals.
Exactly. And just for the record, we will be, well, Monterey will be, we will be the second CCA to sign a PPA with ORMAT. So they're excited about bringing renewable energy to the community choice aggregators as well.
Well, I think we need a field trip.
Oh, yes.
Ideally after a great
Yes.
snow.
That's a good point. I was going to mention that.
It's quite
So-
beautiful there in the summer, too. I know
So
some
this
great
picture
places
up
to
in the upper right-hand corner, that's an existing project that ORMAT owns called Steamboat in Reno. They've offered to take us on a tour of that facility. It's
Okay.
actually a binary cooled facility, so it's one of the ones that, similar to the one that we want to execute a PPA with. So you could see that, you know, it has
We
a
could
nice
go
sunset.
there and visit Tesla's battery factory in one go.
Yeah, I don't know how close it is to that, but.
I know a great place to get sushi.
Thank you.
I think Andrea
I'll leave it at
might
that.
be coordinating or sending out a notice about a possible tour at the end of February.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Javed?
So I guess this is the first time we're doing geothermal, correct?
Yes, we as Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Clean
first
energy.
time, yeah.
Oh, okay, but how old is this technology, and how many plants are out there? How reliable is it?
Oh, geez. Geothermal has been around for a long time. I don't know how old the technology is. Maybe somebody else can speak to that. I know when I was at Palo Alto, we were part of we helped create a project called the geothermal, the geysers up in Hillsburg, and that was back in the mid-'80s. So they've been around for quite a while.
I understand there's some new technology also going into effect on how this geothermal is taken out, and get rid of the carbon.
Yeah, so the cooling technology, the technology that it uses to cool the water in order to create the steam in the hot rocks, that's a new technology that Ormat is employing for this project.
Okay, good. So the 50 pounds of carbon dioxide per megawatt hour, that's still going to be there, or does that
No,
go
that
away?
will not apply to this project,
That'll be
because
fine.
technically this project does not produce anthropogenic emissions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Geo is practically perfect power, so we have the PPP now. Anybody have any other comments or questions? All right, so I shut everybody down with that. Any member of the public wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll come back to us. Any discussion or a motion to hopefully move forward?
Motion to approve?
Wait a minute.
Second.
Liz has a
Discussion?
comment?
Yeah, I do, it's just a comment. I appreciate the information, and although it was technical, it was comprehensive, and I understood where we've been, what we're doing, and where we're going, and I appreciate that very much. And also, I think it fits into our earlier presentation of the Climate Youth Ambassadors. I'm sure there's a way to mime one of these diagrams and have fun communicating what geothermal is versus wind and solar.
Yeah.
My only regret is that we can't get more, but I look forward to a potential second opportunity, so. Anyway, any other comments? We'll move along with the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstains, that carries unanimously. All right, moving right along. Board member announcements, direction for future agenda items. Let me start with Nancy, since I saw you first.
So at one of our previous board meetings, it was stated that a lot of the cities maybe don't post the results, the reports on their websites as much as one might like. So I raised that with our city manager, and he included our report in his December newsletter. So I just wanted to say that I did follow up on that, and that we did post it and publicize it, so.
Thank you. That's on my priority session request, really important. I just wanted to mention that, as I do often, the American Institute of Architects has adopted a policy of decarbonization. And locally, the Santa Clara Valley American Institute of Architects is having a meeting next Wednesday night to discuss the REACH codes and how the local architects are going to be implementing it. So if anyone wants to attend.
All right, anybody else here? Oh, Rod.
So in the better late than never category, at our second meeting in December, my council passed REACH codes, and we were successful in doing the more aggressive form that looks like Menlo Park and Mountain View in its first reading. Now, we haven't done the second reading, right? So what we effectively said was, you have to show justification that it's not feasible in a commercial kitchen to implement with electricity. So if that holds in the second reading, and we'll see, I imagine there may be some pushback, as I know other cities have experienced, but we have worked hard to get there on REACH codes.
Excellent for your city, yeah.
Changing the world is not easy work, and congratulations. Yeah, all right. Any other comments? Well, I want to thank everybody tonight for celebrating my birthday with me. And with that, we're going to call this meeting adjourned.
one last before you adjourn.
Okay, before I adjourn.
I know, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were going to go quite so fast. This is my last meeting, and I wanted to just take a minute and thank all of you for being such a pleasure to work with, but particularly to thank staff from Garish to every single one of you who I've had the pleasure of meeting, including the 3 new employees tonight. You make us look like we know what we're doing up here, and it is so appreciated. I also want to make sure that you all know George Tyson, who will be taking this seat representing the city of Los Altos Hills starting next month. Thank you, and thank you for the lovely gift. I got some golf balls, which I'm sure I will lose very quickly. Yes, thank you.
Are they carbon-free?
I hope so.
Probably not. Okay, any other comments? Okay, then we're adjourned.